The sun beat down on Piper Anderson's back as she lugged a heavy tray of cocktails across the pristine white sand of Sapphire Bay Resort. 3 days into her summer job, and her arms already ached from carrying drinks to guests who barely looked up from their phones to acknowledge her. But the tips were good, and the oceanfront view made even the most demanding tourists bearable. 4 piña coladas for Cabana 7, she muttered to herself, carefully balancing the tray. She approached the luxury cabana, the largest on the beach, where a group of business-looking people had been camped out since morning. Most were typing furiously on laptops or engaged in intense phone conversations, despite the paradise surrounding them. "Your drinks," Piper announced with her practiced smile, beginning to distribute the cocktails. That's when she noticed him. Unlike his companions, he wasn't buried in a device but was staring out at the ocean, a faraway look in his eyes. He turned as she approached, and Piper felt an unexpected jolt when their eyes met. "Thank you," he said, his voice deep and warm as he accepted the drink. Unlike most guests who barely acknowledged her existence, he looked directly at her, his eyes crinkling slightly at the corners. "You're new here, aren't you?" started Monday. Piper replied, surprised by his observation. "Is it that obvious?" He smiled, and Piper couldn't help but notice how it transformed his serious face. "You haven't mastered the I've been serving entitled vacationers for years vacant stare yet." Piper laughed, immediately covering her mouth. Staff weren't supposed to laugh at guest comments, no matter how accurate. "I'm working on my vacant stare, sir. Give me another week." "Owen," he corrected. "Owen Griffith." "Piper," she replied automatically, then added, "Anderson." "I should get back to Piper," her manager's voice cut through the air. "Table 12 is waiting." With an apologetic smile, she hurried away, but not before noticing Owen Griffith watching her go. Piper hadn't expected to enjoy working at Sapphire Bay Resort. The elite vacation destination catered to wealthy clients who could afford the steep price tag for a week in paradise. She had taken the job out of necessity. Her scholarship covered tuition and books, but not summer housing. The resort job included staff accommodations, solving her immediate problem. By the end of her shift, Piper had forgotten about Owen Griffith. Her feet ached as she made her way back to the staff quarters, mentally calculating her tips. She'd need to save every penny if she wanted to avoid taking out additional loans next semester. "How was your shift?" her roommate Tara asked as Piper collapsed onto her bed. "Rich people drinking expensive drinks on a beautiful beach while complaining about the Wi-Fi signal," Piper summarized. "The usual. Any interesting guests?" Piper's mind flashed to Owen's smile. "Just the regular crowd. Business types who can't unplug, couples arguing passive-aggressively, influencers taking 1,000 photos of the same sunset. Well, I had to clean a suite where someone had a pet monkey. Against policy, but apparently money talks." Tara rolled her eyes. "Anyway, we're grabbing dinner at the staff canteen. Coming. Give me 5 minutes to change." The next day, Piper was assigned to pool service, delivering drinks and snacks to guests lounging around the resort's spectacular infinity pool. She was taking an order from a group of women celebrating a bachelorette weekend when she felt someone watching her. Looking up, she saw Owen Griffith sitting alone at a table overlooking both the pool and the ocean beyond. When their eyes met, he raised his empty glass slightly and smiled. Piper nodded, finished taking her order, and made her way over. "What can I get you, Mr. Griffith?" "Owen," he corrected again. "And just water, please. I've got a conference call in 30 minutes. "Vacation and conference calls don't usually go together," Piper observed, collecting his empty glass. "Who says I'm on vacation?" His tone was light, but Piper detected something else, weariness, perhaps. "Well, you're at a resort, so I just assumed." "Fair enough." He glanced at his watch, an understated but clearly expensive timepiece. "Though I've spent more time on calls than in that ocean, which is a shame." "The water's perfect this time of year," Piper said. "You should try actually vacationing sometime." His eyebrows rose, but a smile played at his lips. "Is that the official resort recommendation?" "Just my personal one," Piper replied. "Water coming right up." Throughout the week, Piper found herself crossing paths with Owen Griffith repeatedly. He was always polite, tipped generously, and unlike many guests, remembered her name. Their interactions were brief but pleasant, and Piper found herself looking forward to serving his section. On Friday afternoon, she was cleaning up a spilled drink when Owen approached the bar where she was working. "Leaving tomorrow," he said, leaning against the counter. "Back to reality." "Did you ever make it into the ocean?" Piper asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Unfortunately not." "That's just wrong," Piper said before she could stop herself. "Coming to one of the most beautiful beaches in the country and not even getting your feet wet," he laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "You're right, it is wrong." He hesitated, then asked, "What time do you finish today?" Piper blinked, taken aback by the question. "6, why? I was thinking about finally taking that ocean swim at sunset. Around 6:30, he held her gaze. "It would be nice to have someone who knows the beach well point out the best spot." Piper knew she should decline. Fraternizing with guests was strongly discouraged, but something about Owen's expression, hopeful yet prepared for rejection, made her hesitate. "I can't exactly, just as friends," he clarified quickly. I've been working nonstop for months." This trip was supposed to be part vacation, but it turned into all business. "I'd like one genuine moment before I leave." Piper bit her lip, then nodded. "The cove past the North Rocks, it's quieter there. 6:30. His smile was worth the risk. At exactly 6:30, Piper made her way to the secluded cove, having changed into casual shorts and a t-shirt. She'd told herself repeatedly this wasn't a date, just being friendly to a guest who'd been kind to her all week. Owen was already there, sitting on the sand, looking more relaxed in board shorts and a plain t-shirt than she'd seen him all week. "You actually came," he said, standing as she approached. "I said I would." She gestured to the water. "Best swimming spot on the property." The rocks create a natural break, so the water's calmer. They walked toward the water together, an unexpected awkwardness settling between them. "So," Piper said, breaking the silence, "what reality are you heading back to tomorrow?" "New York." "Meetings, more meetings, and the occasional sleep," he replied. Are you here all summer?" "Until late August," she confirmed, "then back to college for my senior year." "What are you studying?" "Environmental science with a focus on marine conservation." She smiled at his surprised expression. "What, did you think I was getting a degree in pina colada distribution?" Owen laughed. "No, it's a passion of yours then, since I was a kid. I grew up in a coastal town, smaller than this one. The ocean's always been my place." She pointed to the water. "Are we going in, or did you just come to stare at it again?" He grinned and pulled his t-shirt over his head. Piper tried not to notice his well-defined chest and shoulders as he waded into the water. She kicked off her sandals and followed him in. The water was perfect, warm from the day's sun, but refreshing. They swam out to where the water deepened, and Owen floated on his back, eyes closed against the pink-orange sky. This, he sighed, was long overdue. Piper treaded water nearby, watching his relaxed expression. "Why do you work so much, if you don't mind me asking?" He opened his eyes, turning to look at her. "It's complicated." "It usually is when people say that," he chuckled, righting himself in the water. "My father built the company from nothing. When he stepped down 3 years ago, I took over as CEO. I've been trying to live up to that legacy ever since." Piper's stroke faltered. "CEO of Griffith Technologies." He said it matter-of-factly, as if it wasn't one of the largest tech companies in the country. "Oh," was all Piper could manage. She'd been serving drinks all week to a man whose net worth was probably more than the entire resort. "Does that change things?" he asked, studying her reaction. "No," she said automatically, then reconsidered. "Maybe, I don't know, you're just so normal." He burst out laughing. "Thank you, I think. What were you expecting? Horns and a tail?" "No, but I've served a lot of wealthy guests, and most make sure you know exactly how important they are." They swam back toward shore as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the beach. "I should probably get back," Piper said as they reached the sand. "Staff curfew, of course." Owen hesitated. "Piper, I've really enjoyed talking with you this week." "Me too," she admitted. "I'd like to stay in touch if that's okay." He looked suddenly unsure, which seemed at odds with the confident businessman she'd observed all week. Piper considered him for a moment. Why? Because you're the only person in months who's treated me like a human being instead of a CEO or a wallet. His honesty caught her off guard. And because you made me laugh, she smiled, pulling her phone from her pocket. Okay, Owen Griffith, CEO, you can have my number, but I warn you I'm terrible at texting back promptly. After exchanging numbers, they walked back toward the resort, parting ways where the beach met the hotel grounds. Goodbye, Piper Anderson, Owen said, holding her gaze. Thank you for the swim. Goodbye, Owen, she replied, feeling an unexpected pang at the words. Enjoy reality. The next morning, Piper found herself scanning the breakfast terrace for Owen, but he was already gone. She told herself it was for the best. Summer flings with guests were one thing the staff quietly acknowledged they happened, but with a CEO of a major corporation. That was fantasy territory. Her phone buzzed that evening as she was finishing her shift, made it back to reality. The view isn't nearly as nice. Owen, she smiled despite herself and typed a reply. Did you pack some sand in your suitcase as a souvenir at least? Their text exchanges continued over the following weeks. At first casual and sporadic, they gradually became more frequent and personal. Owen told her about board meetings and product launches. Piper shared stories about eccentric guests and her studies. They discovered shared interests in environmental conservation, old movies, and a mutual hatred of cilantro. You know this is crazy, right? Tara said one night, watching Piper smile at her phone. He's a literal billionaire, millionaire, Piper corrected, though she wasn't actually sure, and we're just friends. Friends who text constantly, Tara observed. Has he asked you to visit him yet? No, Piper said, but the question had crossed her mind. What was the end game here? Eventually, the summer would end, she'd return to school, and these texts would probably fade away like most vacation connections. A week later, Owen called instead of texting. Piper was on her lunch break, sitting on the beach with her feet in the sand. Bad time? He asked when she answered. No, perfect timing actually, I'm on break. Good, because I have a proposition. His voice sounded different, energetic, almost nervous. I'm coming back to Sapphire Bay next weekend. Piper's heart skipped. You are, business again, unfortunately, but I'll have Saturday free. He paused. Would you spend the day with me, off the resort property, as a real date? Piper closed her eyes, feeling both thrilled and terrified. Owen. I know it's complicated, I know there's distance and different worlds and all that, but I haven't stopped thinking about you, Piper. I want to see if this connection is real or if it's just a vacation fantasy. It's not that simple, she said, though her heart was racing. I'm still staff here. There are rules. I checked. Staff can't date guests while on duty or on property, but off-duty and off-property there's no rule against it. Piper laughed. You actually researched the employee handbook. I may have made some inquiries, he admitted. So what do you say, one real date? Yes, she replied, knowing she was potentially stepping into complicated territory. One real date. Owen arrived the following Friday. Piper saw him checking in from across the lobby but maintained her professional distance. They had agreed not to interact as anything other than staff and guest while on resort grounds. That evening, however, her phone lit up with a text. Dinner tomorrow. I'll pick you up at the staff entrance at 7 p.m. Piper spent more time than she cared to admit choosing her outfit for their date, eventually settling on a simple sundress that Tara insisted hit the perfect spot between casual and trying but not trying too hard. When she stepped outside the staff entrance, Owen was waiting, leaning against a sleek rental car. He looked different out of his business attire, more relaxed in dark jeans and a button-down shirt with rolled-up sleeves. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. Hi, he replied, his expression warm. You look beautiful. The compliment made her cheeks flush. You clean up pretty well yourself. He opened the passenger door for her. I made reservations at a place in town. I hope you like seafood. The restaurant was perfect upscale but not pretentious, with a deck overlooking the harbor and twinkling lights strung overhead. As they settled at their table, Piper felt strangely nervous. This was different from their casual swim or their text conversations. This was real. This is strange, isn't it? Owen said, reading her thoughts. We've been talking for weeks, but this is our first actual date. Backward, but yes, Piper agreed, relaxing slightly. So, Mr. CEO, do you do this often? Fly across the country for dinner? Never, he said seriously. This is a first for me. The honesty in his voice made her heart flutter. Why me, Owen? You could date literally anyone. He considered the question, taking a sip of his water. Because you saw me, not what I represent. Do you know how rare that is in my world? He leaned forward. And because when I left here, I couldn't stop thinking about your laugh. The conversation flowed easily after that initial awkwardness. They talked about everything: his challenging relationship with his father, her parents' divorce, their shared love of the ocean, their dreams and fears. By the time dessert arrived, Piper felt as if she'd known him for years rather than weeks. Walk on the beach, he suggested as they left the restaurant. They strolled along the moonlit shore, hands brushing occasionally until Owen took hers, intertwining their fingers. The simple gesture felt significant, a crossing of a boundary they'd both been cautious about. I have a confession, Owen said, stopping to face her. I've been looking for excuses to come back here since I left. This weekend's meetings could have been done virtually. Piper smiled. That's a lot of air miles just to see me, worth every one. His gaze dropped to her lips and Piper felt her breath catch. Can I kiss you, Piper? Instead of answering, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as Owen's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. That was. Owen began, better than expected, Piper supplied with a teasing smile. He laughed, touching his forehead to hers. Far better. They spent the rest of the evening walking and talking, stealing kisses under the stars, reluctant for the night to end. When Owen finally drove her back to the resort, he walked her to the staff entrance. When can I see you again? He asked, still holding her hand. You're leaving tomorrow, Piper reminded him. I know, but this isn't over, Piper, not for me. She studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found none. Not for me either. Over the following month, Owen found reasons to visit Sapphire Bay every other weekend. They established a rhythm professional distance on resort grounds, but once off property, they were just Owen and Piper, two people falling increasingly in love. Their third date, Owen took her sailing. On their fifth, they hiked to a secluded waterfall where they swam in the cool, clear pool beneath it. By their seventh date, Piper realized she was in serious trouble. She was falling for a man whose life couldn't be more different from hers. Have you told your friends about us? She asked one evening as they sat on the beach, watching the sunset. Owen's arm was around her shoulders, her head resting against him. My assistant knows. She's been rearranging my schedule to accommodate these trips. My best friend thinks I've lost my mind, but in a good way. Mine too, Piper admitted. Tara's convinced you're going to whisk me away on a private jet to Paris any day now. She felt Owen stiffen slightly. Would that be so terrible? Piper sat up to look at him. That's not real life, Owen. That's not my life. It could be, he said quietly. I'm not looking for someone to rescue me financially, she said, more sharply than intended. I have plans, ambitions of my own. I know that, Owen replied, hurt evident in his voice. That's what I admire about you. I wasn't suggesting. I'm sorry, Piper interrupted, taking his hand. I keep waiting for reality to crash this fantasy. You live in New York running a billion-dollar company. I'm a college student who serves drinks for summer cash. Owen lifted her hand to his lips. Do you think I don't worry about the same things? That you'll realize you're dating someone who works 80-hour weeks and carries the weight of thousands of employees on his shoulders. Piper hadn't considered that he might have insecurities of his own. So what are we doing, Owen? Figuring it out as we go, he said simply. All I know is that being with you makes me happier than I've been in years. Isn't that worth exploring? She couldn't argue with that logic. When he kissed her, Piper let her worries fade into the background, at least temporarily. As August approached, however, reality began to intrude on their bubble. Piper's job at the resort would end in 3 weeks. She'd be returning to her university on the opposite coast from New York. We need to talk about what happens next, Piper said during Owen's latest visit. They were having breakfast at a small cafe in town. "Summer's almost over." Owen nodded, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about that too. Long-distance relationships are hard in normal circumstances. Add in our different lives your schedule." "I know," Owen said, reaching for her hand across the table, "but I'm willing to try if you are." Piper wanted to say yes immediately, but caution held her back. "What does that look like practically?" "I travel constantly for work. I could arrange to be near your campus regularly." "You could visit New York on breaks." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying it will be easy, but I think what we have is worth fighting for." The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tighten. "I think so too." Their last 2 weeks of summer were bittersweet. Owen came to stay at the resort for Piper's final weekend, and they made the most of every moment together. On her last night, they sat on the same beach where they'd first swum together. "I have something for you," Owen said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box. Piper's eyes widened. "Owen, it's not what you think," he said with a soft laugh, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small sapphire pendant, though the look on your face was priceless. Piper laughed, relieved and a little embarrassed. "It's beautiful." "To remind you of where we met," he said, helping her fasten it around her neck, "and of the promise we're making to give this a real chance." She touched the pendant, blinking back unexpected tears. "I don't have anything for you. You've given me plenty," he said, kissing her softly. "You made me remember there's more to life than spreadsheets and board meetings." The next morning, they said goodbye at the airport, where Piper was catching a flight back to her hometown before the fall semester started. Their parting was emotional but hopeful, with plans already in place for Owen to visit her campus in 2 weeks. The transition back to normal life was jarring for Piper. Her college friends wanted to hear all about her summer job, but she found herself hesitant to share too much about Owen. How could she explain that she'd fallen in love with a CEO who had randomly wandered into her life? Owen kept his promise, visiting her campus 2 weeks after she returned. Seeing him standing outside her dormitory, looking slightly out of place in his casual but clearly expensive clothes, made her heart race. They spent the weekend exploring her college town, with Owen genuinely interested in her academic world. "I've been thinking," he said as they walked through the campus gardens. "Griffith Technologies has been looking to expand our environmental initiatives. We could use someone with your expertise." Piper tensed. "Are you offering me a job?" "Not exactly, more like an opportunity. An internship to start, working with our sustainability team." "Owen," Piper stopped walking, "I appreciate it, but I need to make my own way. If we're going to work, you can't try to solve everything with your resources or connections." He looked taken aback. "I wasn't trying to, maybe not intentionally," Piper said gently, "but it would always feel like charity, not achievement. Do you understand?" Owen was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I hadn't thought of it that way. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," she said, taking his hand. "Just be patient. Let me find my path and you focus on yours. We'll figure out how they intersect." Their long-distance relationship wasn't easy. Owen's work constantly demanded his attention, and Piper's studies kept her equally busy. There were missed calls, rescheduled video dates, and moments of doubt on both sides. But there were also surprise visits, long weekends together, and a deepening connection that neither could deny. 3 months into their relationship, Owen invited Piper to New York for Thanksgiving. She finally saw his world, the penthouse apartment with its breathtaking city views, the corporate headquarters where everyone treated him with deference, the social circles where his name opened every door. Overwhelming, isn't it? Owen asked as they rode the elevator up to a charity gala he was expected to attend. Piper smoothed the borrowed designer dress she was wearing. "A bit. You don't have to pretend to love this part of my life," he said, surprising her with his perception. "I don't love it either most of the time." She looked up at him, realizing something important. "It's just a part of you, not all of you. The man I fell in love with was floating on his back in the ocean, remember?" Owen's expression softened. "I love you, Piper Anderson." It was the first time either had said those words aloud. "I love you too," she replied, the truth of it settling comfortably in her chest. After that weekend, something shifted in their relationship. The barriers they'd constructed, his wealth, her independence, their different worlds, began to feel less insurmountable. They still disagreed sometimes, particularly when Owen's protective instincts clashed with Piper's fierce self-reliance. But they were learning to navigate those differences with respect. By spring, they had fallen into a rhythm. Owen had reorganized his work schedule to allow for more regular visits, and Piper had become more comfortable in his world, while he embraced hers. When she received a prestigious fellowship for marine conservation work in the Pacific Northwest after graduation, Owen was the first person she called. "That's incredible," he exclaimed. "I'm so proud of you." "It's a 2-year commitment," she said, waiting for his reaction. "In Seattle." There was a pause then. "Seattle, huh, interesting coincidence." "What coincidence?" "Griffith Technologies has been considering opening a West Coast headquarters. Seattle was on the shortlist." Piper laughed. "Owen Griffith, are you saying you'd relocate your company for me?" "Not the whole company," he clarified, his smile evident in his voice. "Just part of it. And maybe not entirely for you, but the timing seems fortuitous." "It would still be long distance," Piper pointed out. "The fellowship involves field work all along the coast. But weekends could be regular, not transcontinental," Owen countered. "I'd call that progress." A year after they met, Owen brought Piper back to Sapphire Bay Resort, this time as a guest, not staff. They stayed in one of the luxury suites, but spent most of their time at the secluded cove where they'd first swum together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd been assigned to a different section of the beach that day?" Piper asked as they walked along the shore. "I don't believe in coincidences," Owen replied, looking out at the horizon. "I think some people are meant to find each other, even across unlikely circumstances." Piper smiled at his unexpected romanticism. "The CEO and the server, it does sound like a cheesy romance novel." "With one key difference," Owen said, turning to face her. He reached into his pocket and dropped to one knee on the sand. "Our story's just beginning." Piper's hands flew to her mouth as he opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring with a sapphire stone surrounded by diamonds. "Piper Anderson, you walked into my life when I'd forgotten how to live outside of work. You challenged me, made me laugh, and showed me what really matters." His voice was steady but full of emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Piper's vision as she nodded. "Yes," she managed, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to kiss her, lifting her off her feet in his enthusiasm. Piper laughed against his lips, feeling a happiness so complete it almost hurt. They were married the following summer in a small ceremony on the same beach where they'd met. Piper wore a simple white dress with bare feet, and Owen couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him across the sand. Their life together wasn't conventional. Piper completed her fellowship, while Owen split his time between New York and the new Seattle office. They faced challenges reconciling their different backgrounds, balancing career ambitions with their relationship, learning to compromise without losing themselves. But through it all, they maintained the connection that had sparked that first day on the beach. 5 years after they met, they welcomed their first child, a daughter, with Owen's serious eyes and Piper's adventurous spirit. By then, Owen had restructured his company to allow for a better work-life balance, and Piper was leading marine conservation initiatives along the Pacific coast. On their daughter's first birthday, they returned to Sapphire Bay Resort. As they watched the sunset from their special cove, their little girl playing in the sand between them, Owen squeezed Piper's hand. "Best piña colada I ever ordered," he said with a grin. Piper laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Best summer job I ever took." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, both silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought a dedicated server and a workaholic CEO together on that perfect summer day.